Welcome back to Potato Town, everybody. It's actually sumo season here in Japan right now, and I was watching some of the matches only a couple of hours ago. It's one of the few sports I really enjoy watching. I like combat sports. I watch the UFC a lot, but every time I watch sumo wrestling, I'm always like impressed by how much of a serious combat sport it actually is. There are some serious athletes doing this, and it's just not very accessible because of the whole Japanese weirdness around the whole thing with the referee who carries an actual dagger and the fact that they walk around with top knots and big diapers and everything. But it's really enjoyable to watch. Really quite like sumo wrestling, and I also really quite like Ganryu, even though I've never had a chance to play him all that much. It's a character that I was very interested in getting into back in Tekken Tag 2, and I've always been sad that he didn't show up for Tekken 7. I really want him to get a chance. Now, this is one of the old original Tekken characters. He's an old Tekken classic, and it's also a kind of fighter, a kind of martial art that nobody else has. He has very little overlap with other characters. However, he does have some slight similarities with characters like Kuma, for example. He shares a couple of stances and a couple of while standing moves and so on. They kind of, Jack, Kuma, and Ganryu have always spawned a little bit off of one another. As for the sort of backstory of the character, if you're interested, basically Ganryu was an Ozeki, which is the highest rank of sumo you can normally achieve, and he was going to become Yokozuna, which is, in the world of sumo, it's kind of like, imagine in ranked online Tekken if there was a rank above Tekken God Prime, but you couldn't get it by just winning matches. You had to consistently win matches at the highest level, and then Harada would gather a group of some of the most advanced Tekken theorists in the world, and they would have a meeting to decide whether or not you were considered truly one of the greatest masters of Tekken in history, and then they can give you this rank of Yokozuna, which is when you see them have that big rope around their stomach. I don't know if you watch anime, but if you watch Naruto back in the day, some of the characters would have that big rope around them. That's called a shimenawa, and it's something you put around something that is like a holy place where gods and spirits live. And so when you become Yokozuna in sumo, it basically means that you are a living, walking temple. It's a really, really huge honor for a wrestler to reach that rank. And so it has this requirement of something called hinkaku, which is where Ganryu sort of fell out of favor. Hinkaku is basically your dignity as a person, right? You need to be a very, very dignified sort of warrior-like person to qualify, and Ganryu, he kind of likes to gamble and fuck around with bitches, and so he's a disgraced sumo who never achieved his goals, but he's still very good at fighting and, slapping people around. That's kind of his thing. And that's the backstory of the character in a nutshell. I always thought he was very interesting because you will assume, seeing a big fat guy like this, that he would be on the slow side, and I think he is in a couple of ways, but in the same way Gigas can be very explosive and very quick, Ganryu really can as well. He has some really powerful and fast moves. Let's talk about a couple of moves before we talk more about his actual playstyle. An interesting fact about Ganryu is that much like Jack 7, he doesn't get jabs for his 10-frame move and his 10-frame block punish. Instead, he has this headbutt, which is 22 damage in this game, which is decent for a 10-frame block punisher, but he gets a knockdown, and if he's at the wall, he even gets a wall splat, meaning that it is actually a pretty powerful and really, really good block punisher for him. However, your jabs are a lot slower. They only come out at, I think, at 12 in this game, even though they do give you a decent amount of damage. So that's a quick punisher that he's always keeping top of mind. You can use it for quick whiffs as well. It has great range, and it really is a very decent sort of key Ganryu move. Duckable, punishable on block, at least in the older version, so you have to be careful about that. But because you can't really set up a lot of your standard offense with lead jabs with this character, it kind of requires you to be a little bit more creative with how you open up offense. However, I think this is honestly, having gone through his move list today and looked at some of the older incarnations of Ganryu, it really is like an amazingly well-rounded poking character. It's like if you compare him to another character that is like famous for pokes like Miguel, I think Ganryu takes the cake easily. He has some seriously powerful stuff. And you know, Miguel doesn't really rely on his jabs that much anyway because he has crappy range on them. And so if you're able to play a powerful poking style game with Miguel, which I know a lot of my viewers do, I think you would actually enjoy this character. He doesn't have the savage stance stuff and the mix-ups in that way, but the pokes are just so good. This down forward one is amazing. It's got great range. This 4 is a natural extension for 28 damage. It's mid-mid, which is amazing, so no like cheeky ducks when you're using this. And then when you start looking at his low game, like the low pokes are insanely good. Like I love this down 3 with the high crush and the range. And then the down 4, you get this chunky, extremely long range. Sorry about the latency right there. Low for 21 damage, like amazing round and a great range on this thing, absolutely amazing. And then Ganryu famously has one of the best low pokes ever in the game. It's up there along with Elisa's down back 3 in the slightly older games. So it's like a legendary low poke, and it's this down forward 3. Doesn't quite have the range you might want, but it's got the tracking. It's fast. It's very safe for a low poke. It's absolutely amazing. So if you can learn to strategize around the fact that you don't really have fast jabs and lead jabs, you really have some of the most just amazing poking game of any character on this character. And he was actually pretty powerful and considered very good in a lot of the previous games. Now, you probably know about Saint, you know, one of the best Tekken players in the world, famous for his Jack. But back in Tekken Tag 2, Saint's team a lot of the time was Jack and Ganryu. And Ganryu was really, really powerful in the correct hands. You know, you could see him win high-level tournaments. And if you go even further back to like Tekken 5, I've heard some high-profile players say that he's like one of the absolute top-tier characters in that game. I can't comment on it myself because I didn't know anything about Tekken back in like 5 and DR. But it's like a testament to the fact that if you just get this character right and build him in the correct way, he can be amazingly powerful. And I think that's cool because when you get heavy power characters with really big damage and chunky, you know, stuff on them, like Ganryu, you typically run into low-tier characters like Gigas, but with this character, you might actually see some very powerful, even like, you know, top-level tournament play, which I think is interesting, provided that he finds, you know, a fan base and a player base. Let's talk about a couple of cool moves and other cool things about the character. One move that I think is extremely interesting and that I'm itching to try to use if we ever get this character in Tekken 7 is the 4-2. If you have a look at this palm thrust, it's like an amazing long-range mid. It obviously has very good crush properties as well, so you can already imagine how you can harass people with this to great effect, especially if you're good at spacing and your opponent isn't. You know, if it's the kind of person who doesn't default to backdashing and stuff, and you can really hurt them with this. But then the other really cool thing is that you can do a cancel here with 4-2. The notation is 4-2, by the way. 4-2 with tilde 1, and he will cancel this move into this salty slap. Some of his attack animations have salt on them. These they look like sweat beads, and I think that's just it's not his hit spark. I think it's a reference to the fact that sumo wrestlers throw around salt a lot. It's like a purification ritual to ward off evil stuff. I don't know. But he does this thing which is not only really, really great when it hits, it will give you plus frames on block, so you can harass them with this mid and make them hesitate, and then you can cancel it and collect on-demand plus frames using this cancel, which I think is potentially extremely powerful. The way the game has changed between Tag 2 and 7, I mean, it's changed in many ways, but Tag 2 was like, try to stick your opponent with a tag bufferable launcher as soon as possible. Use tag assault on the wall to you know, get such a big life lead that you're probably going to take the round. It was very combo focused, and so, you know, how fast your launchers were, whether or not they were tag bufferable, were like huge factors in this game. But a thing like, you know, having good long range highs and easy access to reliable plus frames is huge in Tekken 7, and it's the kind of thing that you find on the best characters in the roster. So I think this is a potentially really cool thing. If we look at a couple of his launchers and combos for a little bit, he has a down forward too. It's very long range. It will launch crouchers. It's kind of like a palm thrust like that. Comes out at 16, which is obviously on the slow side. But he has better launchers than this that he would use instead. This is kind of the sort of standard, 15 or 16 frame thing that you would use to punish raid charts and stuff like that. And it's very decent. You get very, very good combo damage with this character in this game, and I think that would probably be carried forward. I'm not great at doing, he has a lot of crouch cancelling and stuff you want to do in his combos, but just a basic thing you could do off of a down 4-2 like this would be something like, you could bound right away with that, and then do something like, this is going to require a crouch cancel actually, but maybe that's fine. Let's try it. There you go, and you can see that's 69 damage just off of like a standard launcher like that, provided that you're willing to do a little bit of crouch cancelling off of this back to 1. This recovers in full crouch, which is why you have to do that, but if you can do that, you can actually get multiple... I'm getting some lag issues here again, so I had to press start, but you can get multiples of this string in a row, and that would be your optimal wall carry. So you could launch, do this, and then full crouch cancel into another one. You could keep going like that and get good damage and very, very good wall carry, which is another important thing, obviously, in Tekken 7 or in all Tekken games since walls came out. But I think his combo game would probably be quite powerful and quite well rounded. Apart from the down 4-2, I think his really most interesting and powerful launch is probably the full forward 1+2. Is you see a similar move like this on Jack 7, but this is very, very fast and it covers a lot of ground. And I can see this being one of his better with punishing options when you're not willing to use the down 4-2. It's really, really good, and it's also going to lead to really good damage. You have to do stuff like maybe that to get a good combo, but as you can see, I mean 75 damage right there, didn't even use the wall, so very, very powerful. And some other really cool moves. I mean, the down forward 1 and the down forward 1-4, this is just amazing. It's a block punisher that you have. This is what you get for 10 frames. This is your 13, I'm pretty sure. And then for 14, we've talked about this before. I'm not a fan of 14 frame block punishment. I don't think it's a very important it's not a very important frame, the 14th frame for block punishment, because you get generally really powerful stuff for 15 and you generally get good stuff for 13, and then you have to find a move that is specifically -14 for the 14 frame block punisher to be useful. We've talked about this before, but you do get forward 1+2. I'm pretty sure this is 14 in tag 2. It's 36. It's like a huge knockback move. I mean, using this at the wall would be amazing, getting really, really big damage. So that's cool. So a couple of very decent punishers. I think this is just reliable and really great. For Oki, you actually have some pretty interesting options, and I can see this forward 3 in particular being a really good option. You have a sort of theme in Tekken 7 of a lot of characters being able to collect guaranteed powerful mids on grounded opponents after a spike or some sort of knockdown. It's something that happens a lot, the Mishimas with their steel pedals and so on. And I can see Ganryu being able to collect this maybe guaranteed off of stuff like Sidestep 1 would be like a very decent chunk of damage. But this is obviously a very good Oki option. It's going to really hurt people who stay on the ground. If they get up crouching, they're going to get hit by it. So he has some pretty cool stuff for Oki. I don't know if this actually gives you plus frames on block in this version, but I think that would make sense considering like how big and heavy the animation looks. So that would be a very decent move for that. He also has down forward 1+2, which is a very good sort of floaty, pick-uppy, scoop-uppy mid that he uses for a lot of combos to reach, opponents who are close to the ground. And I could see that being, a possible reset tool. Maybe, it catches people who roll and stuff like that. So I think his combo game would be powerful. I honestly think he's pretty good at launching. I think his block punishment is decent, and I think his poking game, especially in the low department, is absolutely amazing. So it really potentially is a really good character I'm looking at, and I'm kind of surprised by that. I think he would, if done right, he would actually be a pretty powerful character in Tekken 7. I also think he deserves to get a visual update because, you know, he only has like the purple diaper and a couple of bandages, but there are some really cool things that sumo wrestlers will wear when they have like more traditional fancy garb. They walk around in you know, in big robes and stuff a lot, and he would really benefit, I think, from a little bit of a visual update because he looks very plain right here. He's very muscly. I think he reminds me a lot of, there's a famous sumo wrestler called Asashori, who was a Mongolian fighter, and he had this thing going on where he's not as fat as most sumo wrestlers. He just looks like he's completely made of giant wiry muscle, and I think that's pretty cool. And then, you know, give him some, you know, if he's a disgraced sumo wrestler and he doesn't do the sport anymore, maybe he grows his hair out, maybe he wears something different, maybe he's just like a really big former sumo wrestler who now, like, you know, fights on the streets and is a little bit more of a wild card. I think that could be an interesting like direction for him visually and give him a little bit more flavor, because obviously looking at him like this, apart from the really cool and powerful move animations, there isn't that much like flair to the whole thing. And that's important to get people excited. They did such a good job, for example, with Marduk. You just give him a hoodie and a beard and he looks so much more exciting. Obviously a triumph, but all the visual updates they've done to all the characters that were carried forward into 7, whether it's Lars you're looking at right here in the kind of silly costume he had originally, or characters like you know, Leo and all the rest of it, they all look great, especially well, apart from Julia, maybe, in my opinion. I think she looks a little bit like a hobo, but I think people like her look overall, so there you go. Another thing that I want to mention about Ganryu that I think is pretty awesome is that his full crouch is like a complete stance for him, and that makes sense. You see this like kind of crouching thing he's doing here. This is something that sumo wrestlers do a lot. I would almost prefer if you actually put one or both fists down on the ground, because that's what they do right before a match starts. That's the sort of starting position for them. But in sumo, you want to have a very low center of gravity to make you difficult to ragdoll around. And when Ganryu crouches down like this, he has some amazing moves. And he kind of almost reminds me a little bit of like Blanca from Street Fighter, you know, like a charge character like that. Because one thing we don't really see in Tekken is a character that like backdashes and then goes in a crouch and kind of waits and watches the opponent, because you become very vulnerable to sideways movement in this game. But he has some really long range and explosive stuff, mainly this thing, which I think is amazing. This is full crouch down 4-2. Not only is it an extremely long range and high powered launcher, it's 14 frames to impact, so it's an amazingly powerful while standing launch option and whiff punisher, and it's fast enough that you could honestly like just create some space with this, crouch down, have a look, and if you see something whiff, just hit them with this for amazing damage. But yeah, there's a lot of other really good moves from down here, like these mid strings. His while standing game is above average. He has a more traditional while standing launcher in the shape of the 2. But I think his full crouch game is really powerful. He also has a pretty interesting knockdown low. This is down forward 2+3. It's his Thunder Palm, and it's unseeable-ish. It's kind of his equivalent of, you know, half seeable knockdown damage low, but it's very decent for what it does, and you get a very chunky 24, decent Oki because the opponent is face up, head towards, so really cool stuff for that. He does have a snake edge, unfortunately. You know, I'm not a fan of that move category, but he has a snake edge in the shape of a down back 2, and then he can combo. I can just show you that it is actually a real combo starter. And you know, a lot of characters do, and it's just something that you have to get used to. I would obviously prefer if the move just wasn't there, but it's fine. But his lows are just really amazing overall. Another thing that you would expect a sumo wrestler to be good at is, of course, grappling, and he has some pseudo grappler qualities to him, which I think is important and cool. One thing that he does have is this unblockable, and this is the pose that you would see at the start of a round of sumo wrestling, with typically one fist down and then charging in for that first like impact before the, well, it's usually where the match gets decided, but sometimes it carries on for a lot longer than that. And it's just this big, ridiculous unblockable, but he can actually cancel this with 1+2 and turn it into a throw mix-up between a couple of different options, where he can like throw you way up in the air above him and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty cool, and he can do this. Oh wow, we're getting some really crappy latency here, I'm sorry. off of stuff like his 1+2 and then cancel into this and stuff like this. So there's some pretty cool grappling options in there. But then he also has a couple of dash throws. So he has forward, I think it's 1+4. Yeah, that's the one. That's really cool. And he has forward 2+3. Forward 2+3 is just normal like knockdown 40 damage. But this version, the forward 1+4, I think is interesting. It gives you 28, and he just kind of crushes you and carries you forward. But he puts you down at frame advantage for him. I think in this game, I don't remember exactly, but I think it's like +5, which is of course really quite chunky. And it's a cool way of you know, implementing grappling for a character like this. I could even see this maybe giving you the option of wall splatting in Tekken 7. It would be a pretty cool option for that. But he has above average grappling, way above average poking attacks in my opinion, especially in the low department. He has some seriously fast and very high powered launchers and high powered combos. Another really cool thing about him that we should show is probably, this is just a silly like jab string he has. He can do 8 hits out of that. He has the 100 hands, which is wall ender of his that can be a little bit difficult to perform. You know that wall ender that Steve players like to do when he gives you like a million uppercuts. You have something similar with Ganryu, and it looks pretty cool. It's called the 100 hands, and I think the notation is like back 1 a tilde 2, and then you have to spam. Yeah, there it is. And you can see I got 8 hits. You're supposed to be able to get 10 hits with this, and if you get all 10 on the wall, it's like amazing wall damage. Let's see if we can get the 10 hits. Just have to get the input right first. Got the 8 again. This is not difficult to do if you're a good Ganryu player. It's just that I basically never used him. I'm messing up the tilde input as well. Let's try a couple more times. Only 6 that time. Yeah, I got 10 when I was practicing a little bit earlier. And like I say, it's not that hard, but let's not waste time on, you know, trying to show you something that I can just tell you actually exists. But you have a lot of other cool options for your just normal wall combo if you need it. So I think overall this character would probably be one of the few heavy characters in Tekken with serious potential for high level play. Extremely good poking, high damage combos and everything else. It just needs a little bit of a visual update in my opinion. So there's a little bit more character and flair to the design, and if that happens, I think the community would respond to him. I would certainly try him out, and you know, there are a couple of really high profile players like Saint who would probably jump at the opportunity to use this guy. So I think he's a very obvious inclusion, one of the Tekken classics, you know, a fighting style that we haven't seen on another character, and I would definitely love to see him included in Tekken 7. This is going to be the last of my videos talking about some of these retro characters, and I know a lot of you have requested me to talk about others that you would love to see. Bruce Irving is probably top of the list, but Jun Kazama, Alex and Roger, characters like that. And maybe I'll do a final video where I talk a little bit about a couple of them, the ones I decided to not include in my top 3 for this little video series that I've done here. If you're interested in something like that, then let me know. But for now, thank you so much for watching. These have been my top 3 picks for legacy characters I want to see in Tekken 7 Season 3. And I'll see you guys again in the next video. Bye-bye for now.